Now tonight, this may challenge a lot of what you've been raised to believe as well. My guest is Dr. Lawrence Brock. He's a spiritual counselor, a doctor of spiritual science, a clairvoyant, a spiritual healer. And ever since he had a car accident and a near-death experience in 1976, he has had the ability to heal all kinds of people of all kinds of problems. But before we get into what he does, I'd really want to talk about his NDE. I'm fascinated by NDEs and how they change people, because there isn't one person that's had an NDE and has ended up being the same person that they were before the near-death experience. So, Dr. Brock, welcome to the program. Tell us about your life pre-mid-1970s.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure.
I was kind of not a very wild teenager, but kind of wild. Did some things perhaps we think of as not healthy. I was really searching for myself, I guess, like a lot of teenagers. In those days, it was way less expensive to travel, so I thought nothing of getting in the car and driving anywhere in the United States, sort of searching for myself. I never really got involved with alcohol, but did my fair share of drugs in those days. And I did have some mystical spiritual experiences before my near-death experience. Mm-hmm. I just really didn't know what to make of them. Like today, something like that would happen. People have references for what to think about it, partially because it's on TV so much in fictional stories, but people don't think anything of talking about a near-death experience. I had never heard of a near-death experience when I had that. But when I was in my late teens, I went into New York City to see a movie, and my grandfather had passed away a couple of years before that. And I actually saw him sitting in the front row of the movies. And he was a very unique looking person. Mm-hmm. There would be no way someone else would look like him. And I didn't even know what to make of it. I got a little confused and really assumed I just had, made a mistake. But looking back, and now what I can see spiritually, I know that he came to say goodbye to me.
At that time, though, you just went on with your life. You thought that was strange, and then you went back to whatever you were doing in your life?
Yes, I was. My father owned an electrical contracting company. I worked there, and so I was somewhat working in the office, but also working in the construction, building buildings and stuff like that. Kind of being a rugged, masculine man job.
You were a man's man.
Yes, you could say that.
Well, Dr. Lawrence Brock, the man's man. So that's your life in the mid-1970s. At this point, you're in your what? Your teens, your 20s?
My early 20s, yes.
Your early 20s. And in 1976, there was a major car accident.
Yes. I had been living in Colorado, and I came back to Rye Brook, New York to visit my parents. I went to a party, was drinking. It was funny because I asked a friend of mine to drive me home, telling the person at the party I was too drunk to drive, although I didn't feel that way. It's just the person having the party was a young lady that I wanted to connect with. And I left my car there so I could come back the next day and see her. When I was almost back to my parents' house, I realized my sister needed to use the car the next day, and I went back to get it. My thinking I was not too high to drive was not true, and I fell asleep on the way home and smashed into a tree.
So you were asleep when you smashed into the tree. You didn't know that it was happening. You didn't know what to expect.
No.
But what happened next?
I had the thing you see in TV and movies and people talk about where I was in the white light. I wasn't going to it, like everywhere was white light all around, but I was going up more into the white light. I saw my body there. A policeman was kneeling over me that seemed like must have pulled me out of the car, and I was looking at my body. My head was split open. Obviously, my body was unconscious. It was a very kinesthetic experience, which is very feeling. I'm a very kinesthetic person. It just felt like this amazing love and wisdom, and just like everything was great. I always say everything was okay beyond what I could imagine. Like, nothing was wrong. Like anything in this world, in the spiritual world. I just also had a glimpse into like the purpose of being a person, into the human dilemma, and just knowing and feeling that God loves us so much that everything is okay.
I'm under the impression from a number of people that this transition from the real world, the world in which we are currently living and breathing and talking in,
yes,
to the white light, it sounds like such a scary transition. But you're saying it isn't.
It definitely was not for me. It was just all of a sudden I was there. And actually, I do meditations and other exercises now to get into that. And it's sometimes it's kind of intense because there's a lot of energy, but most of the time it's a very gentle, there's just a sense of caring and just knowing that I don't even know how to really put it into words. I've been trying to figure out how to say exactly what happened all these years. And I think people get the message, but it's just not the same as here. It's something better.
43 years later, you still can't come up with words for this. This truly is an unexplainable experience.
It is, and I often say that to people, and a phrase I heard is, if you can put your finger on it, it's not it. So people are always trying to be very specific and explain it, but it's not specific. It's more like, I tell people a lot, like the love, like if you have children, the love of your children, that's the closest thing.
There's so much disagreement in this world, so much confusion, but in the white light, there was caring, and you felt like you understood. Was it mankind or just the world in general? You were at complete peace.
Yes, all those things. It just was, again, I keep trying to figure out exactly what it is, but I also, and even that, since then, I've always known there's just something really good inside of everybody.
I'll tell you what, Dr. Lawrence Brock on the Morgan Cunningham Show. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll finish the details about your NDE, how you came back to life. You returned to the world. You left the white light. And we'll find out if you wanted to leave the white light and how your life changed after you got back into the real world. Only on the Morgan Cunningham Show, live Saturday night talk programming with less hype, more talk at morgantalks.com.
Morgan Cunningham.
Dr. Lawrence Brock, our guest tonight, in 1976, had a car accident and a near-death experience. He was in the white light. Before you returned to Earth, Dr. Brock, did you want to leave the white light at all, or did you want to stay there?
Well, like I said, when I was there, everything seemed to be so good. It just seemed, when I was instructed to go back, I didn't even think twice about it. And I often joke around, if I was, more in touch with some of the things that go on the physical level, I don't know if I would have. To me, it was just like everything is good. And on the physical level and the spiritual level.
Who told you it was time to go back?
Well, there was, behind me, there was a voice that came to me. And I think of it as a spiritual master of some sort. One of the people I met shortly after my near-death experience actually was a Sufi sheikh, but he talked to me somewhat about Mary and Jesus. And when I heard him talk about that, the openness of Mary to the Christ light and to Jesus Christ, I said, well, that's what I heard. That's who I heard. But when I was in the experience, I didn't know who it was, but it just, again, it was very feeling oriented. It just felt like a very wise voice, something I should listen to, very comforting, and a voice that knew everything.
There were people down on Earth, I'm sure, who missed you. Your parents, they were afraid that they were going to lose you. Did you think about them while you were in the white light?
I did not know.
And then you
So the
ended
voice
up...
said to me, you have to go back. Your father wants you to stay. But I knew at that time it was the spiritual father, not my physical father. Even that, the thing you're talking about my family, how they felt, just everything seemed okay. And even now, when I am connected to that spiritual light, when I'm working, I get into this very neutral, loving place that sees why all that stuff happens. And so again, as far as from the spiritual perspective, all of that stuff is all right, and everything is good.
You were in a coma for about 3 days after your car accident. When you awoke and got out of the coma, did you remember this experience?
Yes, I remembered it right away. I didn't say anything to anybody for quite a long time. Again, people didn't talk about this stuff back then.
They probably would have locked you up if they heard you talking about that.
They might have done that, yeah.
At that time, it wasn't okay to say, I had a near-death experience here, and this is what happened when I crossed over.
Right. At best, they would have just dismissed it as some sort of illusion or something like that. But you're right. There's certain things, if there were certain types of doctors there, they would not think it was healthy to be seeing it that way.
Eventually, though, I'm sure that you did tell the story to somebody, perhaps in your family, about when did that happen? When were you okay to share that story?
It was many years later, and it was kind of cool that actually I shared a little bit about it over the years once in a while. I met the Sufi Sheikh. It ended up, I found out after a while of studying with him, he had a near-death experience. So within certain groups, I felt comfortable talking about it. It's about 3 years ago, I was invited to start teaching at the University of Bridgeport, but not about near-death experience stuff, for my doctoral treatise, I did a study on a breathing exercise and mindfulness meditation. So I was teaching a class about that. And the woman who schedules me there after the class was saying she was teaching a class about death and dying. And I said, I had a near-death experience, not really thinking that much of it. And she got so excited. She goes, you need to come to my class. And,
Did you?
Then I did. I taught a couple of classes there talking about my near-death experience, yes.
How is it received these days when you tell the story? I'm sure that people are very interested in it.
Everyone is interested in it. Everything happened with a gentle progression towards pushing me in this direction. Not too long ago, I decided I wanted to watch all the old Star Treks, and I saw that they reference things that happen during near-death experiences. They reference these metaphysical, spiritual experiences, and that these fictional stories really have given people more permission to look at it. And, it's just, the world is moving in that direction, and I've always been sort of getting a kick in the butt to do this stuff. And
in a way, it makes me wonder, did somebody on the writing team for Star Trek or any of these movies or TV programs with similar experiences that you have described, I wonder if somebody on the writing team has actually had something like that happen to them.
You would think so. I don't know specifically that they have, but some of the experiences are too... I know these are fictional, but a TV show where a lot of his experiences are very similar to mine is The Dead Zone, but Stephen King book. There was a movie made out of it, which I didn't like so much, but the TV show was really very like my experience of, he was in a coma for months, I was in a coma for a few days, but when I woke up, I just started knowing things about people. And the healing started, for me, I discovered it because I started to notice my hands would get warm when I would touch people, and they just told me how good it felt and that it helped them. Again, I didn't, it's not like I was thinking, I have these abilities right away. So I learned a little bit. Then I explored that. I started to learn about polarity therapy, which is a very gentle type of massage. So I'm kind of skeptical about this stuff actually, but so I wanted to learn about it also. I didn't just want to assume and.
We are
So
coming up
a
on
lot of stuff, yes.
Let me try to sum this up for the listeners who may be saying, what happened here? We're coming up on a break in a little under 3 minutes, so we'll try to get through this in 3 minutes, and if we don't, that's okay. We'll pause, and we'll come back after the break. But my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you had the near-death experience, you came out of the coma, and at some point you realized that you were learning more about other people, and you had an ability to heal others with your touch, and when you would touch somebody, your hand would get warm. Is that what was going on?
That's what was going on, yes. And they would feel the heat, and I remember a specific time I was with a friend, and they strained their calf on one of their legs, and I just said, I just went to massage it, not thinking, oh, I have this healing power, but that maybe the massaging would help, and I felt my hands get very warm. They felt it, and they go, whoa, it felt better. And I'm looking at it, oh, something's happening here. So it started.
So it wasn't just you feeling it; other people felt it too.
Oh, definitely. They felt it more than me, because I was kind of skeptical about the whole thing.
And if something was wrong with them, say they were injured or upset or depressed over something, or maybe had a chronic illness, did it make them feel any better? Did they tell you?
Those things I learned about further down the road. Yes, I mean almost. When I work with someone, most things, it can help a lot. Some things get helped very quickly, some take a little bit longer.
But at first, when you're touching somebody, it's kind of like, okay, my hand's getting warm, something's going on here, something's happening, and these other people are getting warm. So you probably thought to yourself, I've got some kind of energy here, but until a few years down the road, maybe decades down the road, much later, you learned about that energy and the power you had.
Yes, even you're saying energy. That wasn't even in my vocabulary then. I mean, this was so foreign to me. But I could feel the warmth. They felt it, and there was no denying. You just felt it. Putting the words on it came later. I mean, I remember when I first started learning about energy, I would say that to my father. He goes, "What do you mean by energy?" It was a long time ago. So now everyone knows what energy is.
Now everybody knows, so good I don't have to come up with another word for it. I'm Morgan Cunningham on the Morgan Cunningham Show. We're talking about near-death experiences and how they affected Dr. Lawrence Brock to the point where he had the ability to heal others with his touch, and later on with his words and his actions. And we're going to get into his healing and even meditation coming up in the coming hours here on the Morgan Cunningham Show, live at morgantalks.com.
Morgan Cunningham.
Usually when I work with people for about 3 days, besides any symptoms that might get better, they just feel like the burden of life has been lifted, and they just feel like they're lighter. And then after about 3 days, your body and system get used to that new energy level, and it starts to feel more normal.
Your energy then can be shared a little bit. It's not something that only you have.
It's not something only I have. And it can. People ask me if other people can learn to do this, and people can to a certain extent. I often compare it to a professional athlete who can play their sport better than other people that also can play their sport. I just happen to have a gift to do this really well.
You can do it at a certain level that others may try to reach, but you just can't quite get there. But everybody, to an extent, is born with this ability that you have.
Yes, to one extent or another. And it's easier to do it for someone else than it is to do it for yourself. So
but something seems to have jogged this here, though, for you. The near-death experience obviously brought this out in you.
It definitely did, and it sent me on a journey of, right after that happened, I just needed to know. I needed to know more about what was going on, and, feeling the warmth in my hand, I didn't want to just accept it. I needed to know more. I met some amazing people that knew miraculous healing techniques and taught them to me, sometimes in a direct transmission of more energy that they had. I had this one experience, it was in Manhattan at St. Patrick's Cathedral actually, and the Sufi sheikh I mentioned said to me, "Come here, give me your hands," and he put his hands around mine. He goes, "There, you got it." I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, and he would never answer my questions really.
Huh.
But I noticed after that, the heat in my hand even picked up more. So he gave me another gift on top of what I got during my near-death experience.
He probably didn't want to tell you what you were given, what you had, because he wanted you to learn about it yourself. Because if you're just told what you've been given, if you've been given what you've worked for so long, you don't appreciate it as much. That's my understanding of this.
I think that was a big part of it. I've also learned that trying to pin this down to be a specific thing, it's not. It's the biggest thing. It's like infinite. So trying to describe it in smaller terms is not really what it is. So
Is there Go
Yeah.
on, my mistake.
So I've just learned in my mind to keep my mind back. And even sometimes I do get very specific information about people. Sometimes in my thinking it makes no sense whatsoever, but I've learned to trust it. So I keep my thinking mind back. I keep it back and keep it back, and this information comes, this knowledge comes, this energy comes, like directing me how to heal this person. And I wait and wait and wait, and then it's like, oh, now I really got it. But my mind wants to reach out to it right away and go, oh, I know what that is, but I have to remember I don't know what it is. It's more than I can know.
If I'm understanding this correctly, you get a little bit of you get knowledge of somebody's life that you use in the healing process? Is that?
Yes.
That's right? Have you ever learned something about somebody that they never told you, and you know about them, and maybe you said it to them, and it's like, how did you know that? Has that ever happened?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Yes. I mean, people who know me, it's kind of funny, but yes, some of the things are small, but some things are, I can't, there's all sorts. I'm just thinking of someone who's calls me from time to time, was talking about all this stuff.
And no names mentioned, of course.
Right, yeah, and it was something about their sister. And he didn't mention that to me at all, and, I just said, what's up with your sister? And he just, in 1 second, the energy came in because it opened up his consciousness, and he goes, whoa, I feel better. That's a small thing, but it's still, I can just see things in people's unconscious, and there's a part of seeing, there's a part of hearing, there's a part of knowing. And we just get to know things. So.
Does this process have to happen in person, or can it happen over the phone? Maybe back when you were starting this out, it had to happen in person, but what about now?
Yes, I mostly work on the phone. I work with people all over the world. I do think it's really cool. I have some clients in Australia. Sometimes it's a different day there, and, I think that's extra cool.
That is pretty cool. But you're also dealing with people in different cultures, and somehow you're able to link with them and bond with them to an extent and help them feel better, even though they live in a different country and sometimes maybe a different belief system.
Yes, that is a big part of what I do, especially talking about spiritual things. When people have a specific religious belief, it takes a certain finesse how to work with them. First I listen to find out what their belief system is, and I can talk about it. Really, I'm directing them to open up to this energy. There is this really good thing inside of everyone. Some of it is connecting them. Then there is an energy up. Usually we experience it up to the right, part of it is energetically helping their consciousness open up, but also helping their mind to open up. And then once that comes in, all sorts of cool things. I say cool, but they're really quite miraculous what happens.
Is there a checklist that you use in this process?
I do use checklists sometimes, and part of my learning process was checklists. Now mostly I know what to do right away, but I might have a feeling, well, it's something to do with your circulatory system. And then so I go to get the information, I just want to get enough for this, so this door to open up and the energy to come in. Sometimes knowing it's the circulatory system is not enough, so I'll have to look at the specific parts of it. Sometimes I will know what that is. Sometimes I go, no, I need my list of the circulatory system or the reproductive system or the skeletal system, or there's a list of emotions, there's a list, I have all these lists, and sometimes I'll need to check them because I'm not intuitively getting the thing that opens the flow of energy up.
But this can't always work, can it?
I wouldn't like to say that about anything. When I work with people, I always see something start to shift. And sometimes it's just a shift, a little shift that's moving the person in the right direction of healing. And it's happened many times where I work with someone and then a day or two later, the person will meet the doctor that helps them, or something like that. It's just opening up this flow of healing. It doesn't necessarily need to happen right then, but it opens that flow up. So I've only had a few times where people say they didn't feel anything over the years, but even with those people, I do see something shifting.
We've got about, say, 11 or 12 minutes before the intermission, the mid-show intermission that I always do. So I'd like to put some of this to the test. Now, I'm not trying to ask you for free advice or anything like that, but I think this would be interesting for the audience. So
go ahead.
Well, I don't know how to begin asking this. I guess this is the first time I've ever done something like this. I was in a car accident on September 7th. Could have been much worse than it was. But I'm not severely injured or anything like that. I didn't lose a limb. I didn't break an arm or anything like that. But mentally, when I get on the road, I'm terrified.
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt that way after your car accident, did you? Or
it was a long time ago. I don't remember. I've grown to be more careful, and I am so careful on the road now. But I guess back then I was young and kind of foolish, so I don't remember that.
Well, before my accident, I'd say I was a careful driver, but I find myself being perhaps a bit more careful now that it's a few weeks after my accident. And I'm so scared because somebody's behind me. Are they going to stop because I was rear-ended? Are they going to stop? Am I going to get hit on the side when I go through a four-way intersection? On the highway, oh my God, there are so many nuts driving on the highway.
Yeah.
Are they going to cut me off? Just, in fact, last week, there was a tractor-trailer that started moving in my lane at me while I was trying to pass it.
It becomes more scary. I know what you mean. I got a ticket a couple of years ago for going through a red light because there was this really big pickup truck behind me, and I knew I should have stopped, but it seemed so close I didn't want to stop.
I totally understand.
Just become very aware of that stuff.
I guess what I'm getting at is there a way for me to get over this?
Yeah, I can help with some of that. So the first step usually is there's negative energy around that I clear off. So you had asked me this, during the break, and I started to look at it. So some of that stuff cleared off already. The positive energy is, as we experience it, up and to the right. Okay, and you might start to feel it. Sometimes people feel a little shaky, which it could be that you're feeling that right now. So when I'm working
on the right side of my body, you're saying?
You might feel it anywhere. It just, I know it's almost, trauma releases from the body by shaking, and when I'm here, even though I'm far away, I start to feel a little shaking. So I know some of the trauma is releasing from your body there.
Okay.
So, and some of it is you just have to breathe and let some positive energy in, and we use our imagination to do that. So you can just let that in. It looks like...
it feels almost like meditation, almost.
It is very much like that. So, some of your organs they get a little bit of shock so it looks like I would say your kidney looks a little out of balance there. So we can send some of the positive energy into that. it's good. It seems like you're kind of open to this stuff, which I'm glad to see.
I do feel a bit more relaxed right now.
Yeah.
Or at least I'm thinking about not so much what happened, but moving on. So
That's
I feel
good.
like I'm looking forward and not behind, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. So basically, there was some, generally, I call it negativity that was there, and the negativity wants to hold you back. And the positive spiritual energy wants you to move forward. That's good.
And I can't fight that. If the energy says I'm going to do one thing, I can't fight it and do another.
Well, there are tools I give to people that for self-care, and if anyone who's listening wants them, if you get in touch with me, I'll send them. And I do, I spend hours every day doing self-care, self-clearing, meditating, doing Tai Chi. There's some writing exercise to do that can really help.
If your eyes feel tired, my eyes feel tired right now, does that mean anything?
When I work with someone, it happens, it's sort of like they sometimes want to go to sleep because something's going on that the conscious mind can't quite understand. It also starts to lift the energy up, and it is sort of almost pushing a meditative state on you. So your eyes might want to close and meditate, or sometimes after people work with me, a lot of times they feel very energized or feel like going to sleep. Either of those are very common.
Well, hopefully that doesn't offend you if they want to fall asleep.
No, I know it's part of it because they need to process something on a level that their conscious mind can't quite understand, so they go to sleep. When I used to work with people in person more, there were specific things I did actually to get them to go to sleep, because their thinking was sort of in the way of getting more healing done.
If I have a bad night at work because I work overnights on third shift, if it just goes to all hell and I feel terrible after work, which happens on frequent occasion. I shouldn't say that, but I just did. Oh well.
Right, you don't want to
well,
put that
it's the damn truth. Sometimes I just leave work in a terrible mood. And I'll try to go to bed in the morning. Now, mind you, my whole body clock is different from most people. They're awake during the day, I'm asleep during the day, and I'm awake all night.
Right.
And sometimes I just can't fall asleep, and I find myself thinking about that one thing that irked me at work that I can't get over.
Yes.
How can I just shut off my brain from thinking? Is there a way? I find that such a challenge when it comes to meditation, too. I've never been able to do it successfully.
It is. Yes, like I said, there's this thing, you can look on my YouTube channel, it's called Freedom Writing. It is one of the greatest tools to clear out those negative thinking. And every time I do it, I wonder why I don't do it more. But whenever my mind gets filled with unpleasant thoughts, let's say, I do this process, and it is like a download, dumping all the stuff out of your mental computer that you don't want to be thinking about. It's very cool.
I had a
that
friend.
exercise takes a while to do. There are other things. Sometimes the color purple can be very transforming. So if you can just imagine that through your brain a bit, that might help. And that would be quicker than the freedom writing.
You mentioned freedom writing. I had a friend that kept a journal under their bed, and they would write down every thought that came to them, good, bad, or whatever. And this person claimed that it would release that energy, that negative energy, and all those terrible vibes from their body onto paper. Yeah. And they were able to go about their way with few cares or go to bed, whatever it was.
The freedom writing takes it like another step. It's basically you're really just getting out everything. You're not even caring if you write a full sentence or anything. You're just writing whatever comes to mind. Then you actually burn the paper at the end. So that's taking that whole thing. But I also do journal writing, which to me sort of helps organize my thoughts in a more positive way.
I was going to say, can you go back and reread what you wrote, or is that not advised?
In the freedom writing, definitely do not do that. For journal writing, yes. So there are two different types of writing.
Well, what would happen if you did go back and read what you wrote in freedom writing? Would it bring all of those negative emotions back into you?
I wouldn't say it definitely would, but there's definitely a chance that would happen.
So you
And
burn
a
it
lot
at
of
the
times
end.
the way I'm writing that, I'm writing so fast I wouldn't even be able to read it, to tell you the truth. But I just would say don't go back and read it. You don't want to try to find that out, because it is sometimes. And when you get something out and then you bring it back in, it becomes twice as hard to get rid of.
Do you look at the paper while you're writing? Because typically when I write, I'll look at what I'm writing, but in this case, you just let it all out.
You try not to read it, but I know what you mean. When I'm writing, sometimes I'm looking at it. I mean, I'm definitely looking at it, and someone asked me about that recently, and I realized I've been doing that all these years, but it still seems to work. Just don't go back and read. You know, you don't have to get the grammar right. You don't need to check it. Just keep writing for that.
Hell, half the time my thoughts when I'm in a bad mood, I wouldn't want to go back and read.
Exactly.
I don't even want
sometimes
those
it
thoughts
is
in my
just
head.
swear words and negative things about people. Sometimes it is that.
And I don't think it's healthy to hold on to those emotions inside. You got to try and let them out somehow.
And this is a very safe, constructive way to do it when you're not taking it out on your coworker or your partner or whatever.
How can people find you online?
My website is lawrencebrock.com. LaurenceBrock. On YouTube, drlawrencebrock.com.
I love your YouTube channel. There's this theme music that you play at the beginning of every little clip there. I love that little theme music.
That's cool. It's, there's, I'm trying to think of it. I like making the videos. There are web sites where you can get music people write that they're willing to let you use it. I forget the name of it.
Right, royalty free. I mean, there are a bunch of those sources out there. But your music is very catchy. That's what keeps me going back to your videos.
I like it too. My daughter is always saying how annoying it is.
Oh, no, it's not annoying at all. I love it. I really do.
That's good to hear. I like
Dr.
it.
Lawrence Brock, he's our guest tonight on the Morgan Cunningham Show. Hate to take a pause, but it's intermission time. We'll continue next hour with him.
Morgan Cunningham.
My question is, for Dr. Brock, my guest tonight, have you come across a lot of jealousy through all this time when you're healing people, and how do you get rid of jealousy?
Well, I do come across people who are jealous or envious of what I do, because a lot of people would like to be able to do it.
Sure.
I had something happen some years ago that made me, inside of me, I learned to become friends with these negative emotions. And one of my first experiences was about being jealous. I was getting my hair cut in New York City again. I was in a place where the outside wall was all windows, so sitting facing out, and I was looking down at the street, and there was a pretty woman standing on the corner, and I knew she was waiting for someone, but I was looking at her and she looked kind of cute, and I sort of, in my imagination sort of thought, how nice she must be and everything like that. And then a few minutes later, what seemed like her boyfriend came to meet her, and I felt jealous. And it was ridiculous because I didn't even know this person.
Sure. Well, that happens to everybody.
Yeah, and then it was like I realized I needed to embrace that jealousy and just go, oh, there's my jealousy. And, I love my jealousy. So sometimes I say to myself, I love the part of me that gets jealous. And I just allow myself, instead of being angry at myself for doing, these negative emotions, I let myself love myself. And, apart from my near-death experience, I know that God loves us unconditionally.
You have a very healthy approach, because some people would want to attack that other person. They want to let their jealousy control them, but you accept your jealousy for what it is and just move on.
I do my best to do that, yes. It's definitely
But that is tough
healthier.
to do.
Well, for some reason with the jealousy thing, it became easy after that. Obviously I get angry at people, and it takes discipline, and living a spiritual life, it takes a lot of discipline.
You do you, and I'll do me.
You do, that's right. And I'm a bit older than you, but I've stuck to this for all these years. And back in those days, like I said, no one ever even heard of a near-death experience, or even people I would talk to would look at me like I'm crazy. I guess a good example is years ago, my practice used to be all women coming to see me, and now it's like half men and half women. So it's a sign.
That's great.
It's a sign of the times. It's a sign of, it used to be women were just more open, but now men are too. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
Because you think of men being these, well, I'm a man and I'm really tough and I'm not going to share any of my emotions. I'm going to hold them in and I'm going to go get drunk at the bar and beat somebody up. That's the old school masculinity. I think
That's right.
It's becoming more and more okay and acceptable for a guy to open up to his feelings.
And it takes the greatest courage. It's the hardest thing, and it's in a certain way it's easy not to open up, and it's much harder to. So I've been lucky to get to work with professional athletes, and I tell them, compared to training for your sport, this is hard. That's easy. You just got to be strong. You be tough. It's always the same thing. For this, sometimes it's being gentle, sometimes it's being strong, sometimes it's being tough, sometimes it's, being vulnerable. So it's harder than training for professional football or whatever it is.
And training and learning, it can be so difficult. I remember when I was working in radio a few years ago, I was trying to really improve the sound of my voice, my diction, and so forth, which can still use a little bit of work. I'm always working on things. But at first, it was so difficult. It was so hard to get decent at what I was trying to achieve and do. And I had a coach that was not hard on me, but he would, after a little while, he'd say, hey, you're not on the right track here, get back on track, And there was a point there where I said, I'm going to quit. I can't do it anymore. Have you ever thought to yourself, this is so hard, I'm going to quit, or has it been just so natural for you?
Doing it has been. The business part of it sometimes, there's a business part to everything. That part sometimes is kind of hard. Yeah. I remember when I was working on my doctoral treatise, as soon as my advisor saw it, I'm not particularly a good writer. She said, you need to hire someone to edit your paper. I said, and I told her I will, but I want to write it first. But every time I would send her some, a new version of it, she would say, she would just keep saying negative things. At some point I said, should I wait and graduate next year? She said, no, it's really, the content is really good. You just need to. So at that point I was almost going to give up, and when I told her that, she really encouraged me to go. So,
but giving up is not the answer.
No, it is not the answer. And there is, in a certain way, doing the spiritual work, there is part of it where you really have to push through. Sometimes there's time you have to hold back. I don't think it's giving up, but that thing, it's usually in your career, there is part of it. You just keep pushing, and it most likely will work.
Everything that you do, whether it's helping somebody meditate, in my case, trying to help me forget about my negative energy that I got in the car accident a few weeks ago, and trying to move forward through deep breathing and through forward thinking and all of that, accepting and embracing one's jealousy, trying to never quit. This is so different from typical Western medicine, isn't it?
It is. It is more you're looking more at the big picture of being healthy. In Western medicine, you're looking more on the symptoms. In this, you're looking more like towards what is health. I also have to add in, I'm not, like a lot of people who do what I do, look down upon Western medicine. There are sometimes it is definitely the thing that helps the most. And
could you give an example?
Yes, I can give. I have a longtime client who takes, medication from a psychiatrist. And when I first started working with this person, I was sort of against medication, but when I look at what her karma is, and what her basically what her soul agreed to do in this lifetime, the medication is part of it, and I see it doesn't throw her out of balance. So I'm looking at everything: is it in line with the person's destiny, their karma, their life path, whatever you call it, and can their body handle it? So if something is in line with their karma and their body's having a hard time, I can help their body learn how to handle that. So I remember some years ago, I was in upstate New York, and I saw someone that I had known for a long time who had moved to California, and he had cancer. And I gave him one session, and his whole attitude really changed about it, but it became very clear during the session that it would be best for him to pursue, Western medicine. I don't remember if it was doing chemo or radiation, whichever one it was definitely the right thing for him in line with his karma. And he just felt better, and he contacted me a few weeks later just how better overall he was feeling, and that the treatment started to be successful right away. So there is something in us, like our soul or our spirit knows what our life path is, and working within that's how people heal. It's just when they're like you're talking about, you're sticking with the radio thing. I mean, you have a voice, it's like so cool. It's like you're sticking with your thing, and that might not be someone else's thing. But that thing that is your thing, that's what you have to stick with, whatever it is, whether it's, whether it's doing heal. Sometimes people say to me, oh, I don't know how to be spiritual. It's like, well, being spiritual could be cooking. It could be being a housewife. It could be designing clothes. It could be anything. So it depends there's almost like a matrix inside of us, and we have to go along with that, and that's what makes us happy and whole.
Have you ever met anybody or had a client who said, I don't know, worked in a hospital or any job, it doesn't have to be a hospital or any other job, and you just said, this isn't right for you? I'm not thinking of anything like that, but I do remember a client. This was someone who was a client since they were very young, because his parents came to see me. But when he got to college, he went to school in Arizona, and I could see that the energy of that part of the world was not good for him. And I tried to tell him not to be there, and he was stubborn. But he really suffered the whole time being there. He was not a happy camper, and he was someone who could live in New York, or he could live in in certain parts of California, and that would be fine for him. So you look and say, okay, well, you're living in this part of the country, maybe moving to this part of the country would be better for your energy, but you're not trying to force somebody into doing one particular thing.
No, generally I make suggestions, but I also tell people it's a good idea to listen to me when I say things.
Can you see elements of the future?
Yes. I normally do not tell people that, though.
Why is that?
I've just learned that it influences people. Again, I have these little stories that were big learnings for me. A lot of times people are asking about relationships. So when I had an office in Manhattan, was coming to see me, and I saw they were going to meet someone. This was a woman. I said, you're going to meet this really handsome guy, and he wears glasses. And I tried to say, but this guy's not a good guy. You should stay away from him. But she couldn't hear that part. All she could hear was she was going to meet a really handsome guy.
Uh-oh.
And she met this guy, and she told me, oh, I met this really handsome guy. And I said, I knew it was him, but I said, does he wear glasses? She said no. And a few weeks later she came in, she said, he does wear glasses. He just didn't want to put them on in front of me in the beginning.
Oh my goodness.
And I tried to tell him, and it ended up he was, using drugs and stuff. And,
oh man.
Going out with other women, and, he
not
wasn't
a good
hurting
guy.
her in any way. Not a good guy. And so that taught me a lesson of, people hear things selectively, and a big part of what I do is people need. So when I open something up, a lot of times there's not the complete results right away, because people need to go through their karma. They need to learn something. So really what I'm doing is opening it up, the things, so they can get the lesson. But that lesson is normally something more in our unconscious. So the healing takes place a little further down. And if you give people information, sometimes it takes that part away from them. So they're not really learning what they need to learn. They're not really fulfilling their prophecy or their karma or their destiny. Again, whatever you call that thing. So I've learned. I mean, once in a while, I see things spiritually that are definitely going to happen, and then usually there's a certain percent that it'll happen. Sometimes when something once in a while, if someone's really trying to get a job and I could see, well, you're definitely going to get a job, I'll tell them that.
Mm-hmm.
But I won't say the specifics so they could learn it their own way. I can guide them some, like, you don't want to take that learning away from them. It's kind of important.
Sure. The learning is definitely very important in anything, especially in a job environment or a relationship even. So if I were to ask you about the future of my career, you're not going to tell me? Because I'm curious. That's what I'm very focused on.
Right. Well, I can see...
we do have a break coming up, so if you'd rather address this after the break...
No. Well, I'm just seeing there's a little something blocking you there that I can clear up. So I do think there's a good chance you could do well in your career there. It looks like there's a pretty high % chance of that. So, but that's something you already know, okay? And that's...
but no specifics or anything like that. You're not going to get into any specifics.
You mean where you're going? I usually don't see that. So there's
Okay.
part of it. So I also, I make those videos on YouTube, but I've worked with a production company from time to time over the years. And my daughter likes to make films, and I tell her, you have to act like you're the ruler of the world. And basically, you have a camera in your hand, you can go stand in front of anybody. She's kind of shy about it. You stand in front of them, they won't even say anything.
No, they
like
won't. Hey,
show.
Dr. Brock, you've got to hold on. We'll be back on the Morgan Cunningham Show.
Morgan Cunningham.
Because to be honest with you, when he was trying to help me out with my car accident last hour, I did feel a little bit better just hearing his words of comfort. And he told me that I would start feeling some movement on my body, specifically on my right side. And during the last segment, while I was chatting with Dr. Brock, my right hand twitched a little bit. Wow. So, Dr. Brock, whatever you did to me last hour, it's working. I would say that you're not a quack.
Well, thank you.
But I'm sure that there are people out there who are skeptical of what you do.
There are. But usually once people have a little experience of it, they know. I always have stories. A few years ago, a young man in his early 20s was coming to see me. He was kind of sick, and his father was very suspicious. And so his father came to, I had an office in Fairfield, Connecticut. And his father came to see me, sort of, trying to prove that I was a quack, basically. And he sat down and started talking to me and was more interviewing me. And sometimes when I work with people, the energy that comes in has a very clear color to it, a very specific color. A lot of times it's purple, but this time the room filled with green energy.
Is that good or bad?
It's good. Green is usually physical healing, as a purple's more spiritual healing. But this guy, the skeptic, saw the green light. He goes, "Oh, what happened? The room just filled with green." I said, "Oh, wow, that's cool that you saw that." And I tried to explain about the colors, and he spent like 20 minutes trying to say, "Oh, it must be the light coming in the window," or, explaining. And after that,
trying to find a way not to believe it.
Right. And then at some point he just said, "I don't know what you do, but I feel so good." And he wasn't there for any specific healing, but he did pick up on the energy and started to feel good. After that, he was fine with his son coming to see me.
Let me sum that up a little bit. So you have a non-believer going in there trying to discredit you, and the second he walks in the door, just about, he starts to realize your power and your ability.
Yes.
And pick up on the energy and see the green light and everything, and he was a non-believer.
Yeah, yes. And, sometimes non-believers are even a little easier to work with than people.
Really? I wouldn't imagine that at all.
Well, there's people who think they know, and then they're always trying to figure out what it is, and that doesn't particularly help. It's fine to work with them, but it's sometimes the non-believers are just easy because it's such a different experience for them. It like shifts like that, and you go, whoa, it's like, what happened? It's kind of fun to watch.
But there are quacks out there. There are people who claim that they do what you do, but they really
Yes.
don't. How can somebody listening judge for themselves? How can they come up to how can they arrive at the conclusion that, okay, this person is not a quack, this person's not a joke, they are in fact legitimate?
You got to sort of trust yourself. A lot of people come to me because their friend tells them about me, so I don't know. I am, as I said, kind of skeptical about most people who do this. And there's some people who there's a positive part to it, but there's also a negative part. And so it's hard. But it's like going to see anybody, a doctor, or, getting some work done on your house. You have to, referrals, talk to them, see how you feel about it. Try to find, in the beginning I said I'm always trying to figure out to explain exactly what I do. That's why I mostly use testimonials, because people saying they had a good experience, that really conveys what it is. It is hard to put into words, but when people get healed and, their words, it rings true, and people can feel that.
Let's say I have a friend who I think could use some of your magic, if I can use that word, some of your ability, but they're skeptical. They say, yeah, Morgan, that's not for me, that's not for me. Is there anything I could say to make them consider it, or do they have to come to realize that on their own?
Some people force their friends to come see me. I don't know. If you had an experience with me and you speak from your heart, people usually get it. Some people do say it's not for them. One of my great successes was a woman, her friend forced her to come see me. She had a miscarriage, and her reproductive system was in very bad shape. It also started to affect the rest of her health. The doctors were concerned for her, and they basically told her, there's no way you're ever going to have a child. And, one of my longtime clients sort of pushed her to come see me, and I knew as soon as I saw her I could help her. After 2 sessions, she wrote me this email saying, I don't know what you do, but the doctors say I'm getting better, and they have no idea how. But she definitely did not believe. Her friend forced her to come, and the rest is history.
So when Western medicine couldn't come up with some kind of cure or treatment, Dr. Lawrence Brock did.
Yes.
But yet you don't know exactly what you're doing. You just kind of let your intuition take over and see what happens.
Well, yes, that's true. I do know I'm healing things spiritually. So there's a certain, we could say, our soul that's connected to God, or there's part of us that's connected to this very positive energy that sometimes gets blocked. And so I can sort of open that up. Some of it is in the way I talk, it shows people where it is. And it lets the forgiveness come in, where people will let go of anything that inside of them that's blocking their connection to this.
Is there anything that you can do to help somebody that wants to get rich or wants to become famous? Anything like that, or is that not what you do?
Yes, there are things to do. It's a little different. So in what I do, a spell is, don't do that. That's not a good thing. So sometimes, you were talking about practitioners, sometimes practitioners, a spell, in the way I see it, is imposing something on top of someone's natural, God-given abundance, and what I'm doing is trying to open that abundance. And there's a certain inner wisdom that we want to open up that shows that path. Like if there's an unfoldment and a fulfillment, and that part of like the real true you is coming to fruition, then that's a good thing. If it's trying to change who you are and create something positive, that's not what I do.
That's not healthy either.
Once those things open, it's just there. You just know it. It's even beyond belief. It's just really knowing. Everyone has something really special in them. And once that can open up, it's quite a remarkable thing.
Have computers helped you in any way with what you do?
I used to use a very sophisticated biofeedback machine that I feel was part of my education. I love computers. I like making the videos. Right now, the computer's not really connected to my work, but there's something about like networks and computers that is very similar to connecting into the spiritual energy.
How?
It just, in a certain way, you're connecting into this network of God and network of love, and it just feels similar to me.
In other words, you're not using a computer per se to do networking, but you are yourself networked with other beings.
Yes. There's angels, there's the archangels, there's all these different healing masters and teachers spiritually that come in and support the work that I do. Sometimes very strongly, like a specific master will come in and work very closely with one person. Usually angels come in and start to support them in the healing work.
Let's take the last few minutes here on the Morgan Cunningham Show because we've got less than 7 minutes to go, so we're going to make good on all that time. Meditation. So many people are talking about it these days, but they all seem to say that they don't have time for it.
Yes.
Is that a problem? Is time really an issue? That, for me, I told you earlier, my problem is not time. If I want to do something, I'll make time for it. And I'd love to try meditation, but I don't do it because I can't clear my mind well enough. But many people are saying there's no time.
Well, like you said, if something's important, you make time. That's all there is to it. Now, to me, meditation is something I make sure I do every day. And that's important to me, and I know the benefit of it. I don't think you need to quiet your mind. It's more like you just push the talking to the side a little bit. Then the part that's more positive, you start to focus on it. And it takes practice. I've been meditating for many years, and there are still some days that the mental chatter. So it's interesting. So there is the mental chatter, and I like it when that becomes more peaceful and not my focus. There's also a part of the meditation I do, this great energy comes in. It's a healing energy I use with people. It also heals me. Sometimes my mind's chatting and chatting and chatting, and all of a sudden this energy comes in anyway. So I think there's a saying I like is the only wrong way to meditate is to not do it. So if you start taking the time and do it every day.
I have tried yoga before. Is yoga similar to meditation?
Yoga, you're talking about body postures. To me, I started learning yoga many years ago, and that was more a part of it. Now it seems people use yoga as just an exercise also. But the idea is the breathing, and you quiet your mind whatever you put your body's position.
Whenever I did yoga or tried meditation, although haven't been too successful at either, there's always music involved. How does music play in?
Music can be helpful. There's certain meditations that it's not, though. Music is a good thing. I normally don't listen to music when I'm meditating or the other spiritual exercises I do. I find it is sort of distraction. I do love to listen to music, but I normally don't for meditation.
So you wouldn't advise it to people who were trying meditating?
No. It depends. So the type of meditation I do is a little more active and trying to activate. It's trying to clear negativity. It's trying to activate the positive energy in you and invite in this positive energy. For that, I would not suggest using music. Sometimes if there's a meditation of just relaxing, music seems perfect for that.
Talking about intuition, this may be the last thing that we're going to bring up. Actually, my very first program on the Morgan Cunningham Show was about intuition. Does meditation help somebody's intuition?
Yes. Well, again, there's many different types of meditation. The meditation that I do definitely does. It is connecting into this energy that brings in an incredible amount of information, knowledge, and awakens your intuition. That, as I mentioned earlier, the tricky part is keep your mind back. Don't let your mind's going to come in and try to label things, and part of being very intuitive is don't label it until it's 100% clear. So it's like something, imagine it like information coming from up above. It gets close as soon as it's arm's length away. As soon as you can see it, you went, oh, I know what it is.
Yeah.
No, you wait till that's like in your head, and then you go, oh, now I really know what it is.
Everybody's born with intuition, but it seems sharper in others and not in some. So
Yes.
there are ways to exercise it, I'm assuming.
There definitely are. I mentioned the freedom writing to you. It is a great way to clear all sorts of things, to clear your mind, get rid of the negative self-talk. There are meditations designed specifically to increase. I have two on my YouTube channel. One is the Ocean of Divine Love meditation, and the other Meeting the Master meditation, that are both designed to connect into this all-knowing energy.
Dr. Lawrence Brock, we have about a minute and a half left. I'd like to thank you for all your time tonight on the Morgan Cunningham Show. It's been a pleasure. And I do feel, honestly, I'm not just saying this because I'm doing this as a radio program. I'm just saying this to be honest. I do feel more relaxed and maybe one with myself.
That's good, yeah.
And hopefully that's the case for other people in the audience as well.
Yes, usually when people listen to my things and do the meditations, they definitely feel the work. It definitely works.
One more time, let everybody know how they can get in touch with you online. You've got a website. Not sure if you do social media very much. Tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Yes, lawrencebrock.com is my website. Dr. Lawrence Brock is my YouTube channel. On Facebook, I just have a personal account, Lawrence Brock. I haven't quite figured out how to start the business account on there, so I use my personal account, yeah.
Well, Facebook is a pain, so, There's
a lot of people there, so it's a good way to reach people. But my YouTube channel, the videos are pretty good, and they have great information in it.
Well, Facebook is always trying to censor people, too, so, you got to be careful with what you say on Facebook. But nothing that you're doing is highly offensive, though. I've had some guests where they're like, we hate Facebook because we're not allowed to say what we think. Dr. Brock, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Same to you.
And everybody else, thank you for listening.